Hello, fellow sim magicians, and welcome to the SIMAGIC Podcast. We're kicking off this new way of talking about sim racing. Sim racing is a huge topic, and we want to use this as a new way of us to talk about everything about sim racing and highlight the things that we love about it.
Totally. I'm Elliot, and I'm here as well to co-host some of these sessions. Obviously, you've seen us around, you know it's true, and you know you're here, so we all love sim racing. But we know there's a lot of stories out there that don't get talked about, or you might be new to the world of sim racing and you don't know where to start. So the intention here is to share some more long-form content, chat with some of our favorite creators, and just see what's new in the world of sim racing. Today, we do have a guest. He's a SIMAGIC ambassador. He's been streaming a lot over on YouTube. You'll probably see him at, I think it's JACKZER YT. He's been getting prepped for his Spa 24 in iRacing. Please welcome this chat with JACKZER.
Let's get into it.
And there he is. Hey, JACKZER, how are you feeling?
Good. Good to see you guys. How's it going?
Yeah, it's good, I think.
It's very good.
Yeah, we're ready to roll. It's been a while. I think last time we had a chat was at least a couple of weeks ago. But for all the people at home, do introduce yourself. We do just want to know who you are, what you're doing. Tell us all about yourself.
Super. Yeah, no. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jack. I'm from Ireland. I'm a sim racing content creator. I'm also a sim racer at heart. Absolutely love it, passionately, which you probably will see bleed through in this in this little chat with the boys. And yeah, that's what I do. I'm a content creator. I like to make YouTube videos. I like to live stream. I like to entertain. I like to try and get faster, but that's its own issue. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's what I do. I like to create and entertain and be silly and just have fun, but share the passion. You know.
Awesome.
That's the forever struggle of a sim racer. So obviously, first thing we want to get into is why sim racing? Why did you start to pivot into sim racing content?
That's a really good question. So to make a long story medium size, I've always been a gamer. Always a gamer at heart. So I really liked shooters. I liked open world games, Grand Theft Auto, all this sort of stuff. Always been a gamer at heart, but naturally I kind of burnt out in some of those. The shooters got a little bit too stressful, let's say, and then I went into military simulation, which is a bit slower, still a shooter. I'd done my stint there. Again, I made content there for a simulator called Arma and DayZ and all these kind of things. Very passionate about it, but after a while, the gaming on a keyboard, gaming on a controller, it just lost its thing for me, which is natural. I might come back to it at some point. But then in 2015, 2016, I got my first wheel on Gran Turismo. I'd been playing with a controller for a while. I was like, this is fun. The faster I go, the calmer I am. The more fun I have, the calmer I am. It's like an inverse thing to shooters. And once I got the wheel and I felt force feedback for the first time, I was like, okay, there's something here. This is a much better way to interface with something that I'm passionate about, such as gaming. So yeah, I had always had a passion for cars, but it really kicked off around the same time as trying sim racing. I started watching motorsport. The more I sim raced, the more I understood motorsport. The more I understood motorsport, the more I enjoyed sim racing. The love affair began. So that's why sim racing. And the thing is, real racing's too expensive. So.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely true.
That's true everywhere. And we're all very similar. I think we all have that background. For me, I think I really fell in love with it around COVID. So obviously, maybe it was just being stuck at home. I don't know, but it was F1, and then I got my first wheel, and then it was all into blur really. But I just absolutely fell in love with it, and just haven't looked back.
Yeah, I feel like COVID, it's a time where kind of like everyone kind of got into sim racing because everyone's stuck in their houses and don't really have anything better to do. And I feel like, aside from the fact that it's just something that you can do all the time once you have the sim rig in your house, which is very convenient. And I think it's a good thing that Jack mentioned in just now is that, it's a good alternative to real life racing because it's really, really expensive. As a, ex-karting racer myself, I really want to continue doing that because of how much joy it brings to me in karting, and not just in terms of like how I enjoy the driving side of it, but also like the side of me just getting to know this, knowing this community, knowing this industry. It's just the process of me improving and learning along the way is really good. And I also really like the fact that Jack mentioned about shooter games, because I'm personally also a big shooter game fan. So it's just interesting to see how there's a lot of things in common between like different sim racers, because like a lot of my like teammates were also diehard sim racing fans. They also play a lot of FPS. Terrible as that is.
Yeah. Hey man, but we've all got our avenue. So So I think we have a few burning questions for you, Jack, that we'll kind of casually fire away. But I remember we've been talking recently about that, and we'll touch on it later, as this idea of like sim racing really connects people and as a community. But the burning question for us, because we've both watched you so much, is how do you remain so chill, so calm at the wheel, and yet so talkative when you're deep in an iRace, maybe 30, 40 minutes in, and you just are still so calm. How do you do it?
I don't know. People have pointed that out in the comments before. I think naturally, as a sim racing content creator, you kind of have to be like that. Otherwise, I'm racing in silence, and my racing isn't that fast to be just observed in silence like an exhibition, unfortunately. So I have to fill it in. For anyone curious though about it, back when I was playing military simulators, as I said, it was more slow paced. There's a lot of running around. It could be an hour or two until you're in before you have contact. So there's a lot of filler time there, and it's running in a field. So, you got to sprinkle a little something on there. So I have many years experience in just having a part of my brain that 25% entertains, 75% does performance and actually gaming. And the more they're separated, the better I perform. If I was to actually sit in silence and sim race, I'd crash, because I'd be like, I'd start tweaking. I just mess up, So yeah, that's kind of it. Keeps me in a rhythm, keeps me in a flow.
There's a flow state there for sure. I've found that if I'm in Discord, like talking with friends, I somehow, when I take away that focus, as silly as it sounds, like I'll actually go faster if I've got a distraction. I don't know why, but there's something there for sure. I've found
something worth looking into, 100%. Yeah, there's something about chatting or having something in the background. Arguably, there's 1 or 2 more % left on the table. When I qualify, I go quiet, I'll do well. But if I try to go quiet and eke out that time on my own, something will happen. So yeah interesting that.
So I guess that moves us on to, obviously you're here and you're a SIMAGIC ambassador. You're part of the team. Why were you so keen on us as a brand? Do you have any of favorite products from our lineup? We'd love to know.
So very interesting question. So my route hardware wise was a Logitech. It was a little Gran Turismo with a little sequential shifter back in the year, probably 2003 or 4. But I don't really remember that.
I know that.
I wasn't old enough to use it, but or understand it. But props, I got that as a gift. G29, Fanatec CSL Elite. But naturally, these two are very entry level. They're belt driven. They lack DD, the direct drive system. So I spent a lot of time researching, because it's a lot of money getting a direct drive wheelbase. Now, obviously, you're at this stage where you're kind of getting into the hobby, so your passion is growing, and your commitment to becoming an enthusiast is there. Some sim racing gear can be quite expensive on the outside, but then when you're an enthusiast and you buy a direct drive wheelbase, you use for 4 or 5 years. It's basically, as some girl maths would say, you're losing money by not buying it. But what I was saying was, when I was researching, I was looking into the Alpha Mini. And I checked out lots of great reviewers, Lawrence DeSalvo. Basically, everyone that reviewed that wheelbase said it was an exceptional wheelbase. So I took my risk, because I can't try it here in Ireland. There's nowhere I could try it. And when I first got the Alpha Mini and the FXC wheel, I remember I was going around the house, everyone showing them. I was like, look at this, like, feel that, feel the shifters, feel the weight of that motor. And I always say that on my stream, when you take a risk as a buyer, as a sim racer, and this is before I was making content or anything, I was just passionate. I wanted to have a good DD wheel. It's nice when you open up a product after doing all your reviews, all your research, you pick up a product and it's just like, I was right. Everything's going to be all right. And I have to say, the FXC and the Alpha Mini, like every other owner out there that has it, would agree that delivers that firm, just that, okay, you made the right choice. And I did. And that's where my entry in SIMAGIC started.
Solid wheel to start with.
It is.
You went big almost immediately, which I respect. I think I was pretty slow on the pickup. I was running like the GT1. I was Alpha Mini as well, but now we're a couple years in, and what are you using as your main wheel at the moment?
At the moment, I'm using the GT Neo, but I've came a long way from that. Like starters, I did the same thing as Jack. Like my first base was like a G29. There's like a full set to get into PlayStation, and then I remember started out. I think I started in like Drive Club. That was like my first I would say like sim title, yeah, and then it kind of just I quickly just gone down to the rabbit hole of and then going on Forza, going on Gran Turismo, and then getting to Assetto Corsa, and then just slowly getting from there. And then for me, my first interaction with SIMAGIC, it was I recorded quite clearly is the M10, because it was like the first proper like direct drive wheel that's available for under 5 figures in China, and it's like a very big thing because like at the time, especially before COVID, when back in the time when direct drive wasn't really that prevalent, it's not something that everyone can kind of like get their hands on. Like a single base will like take you all the way up to like 20k, 30k even, and then they're quite a hassle to set up. Like because back in the time, softwares aren't as developed. So everyone kind of cater into like getting themselves like a very entry level G29, like P300 kind of thing. But the M10 was like the thing to us at the time. It was like, oh cool, I can get like a direct drive wheel for like under 50K. And so I got myself an M10 with a GT1 wheel.
So good.
And then I remember pairing it up with a TLCM.
Boom.
And then I just started going like full hardcore PC sim racing from there on. And then it kind of just started from there on because like it made such an impression on me because it was my first direct drive wheel. Like everyone said that direct drive wheel has, they make a very big impact like compared to a belt drive wheel. You can really feel that. Even the M10 now looking in comparison to like Alpha and especially the Evo, now you can tell why it wasn't as good as a solution, but at the time for someone who just came from belt drive driven wheel, it's like what the thing.
Pretty intense, man, for sure.
Yeah.
I felt, it's always the direct drive bug, like everyone gets bitten by it, and then by that time you're basically a hardcore sim racer. Now it's like, in 2025, that gate to entry for direct drive is like way, way lower than what it used to be. So it's such a fascinating time.
It's a rabbit hole.
But anyway, so moving on, we've just got a couple of like rapid fire questions now, which we'll pass around and each of us can answer. But the focus of today was to obviously bring Jack in as a friend of SIMAGIC, but highlight iRacing as well. We know all of us here are very much in the deep end. We could talk about iRacing probably for like 12 hours. But for the listeners who might be not so in the deep end as much as us, we can get there eventually and talk about iRacing in general shortly. But before we do, I thought we'd just have a nice fun question. What's your favorite thing in sim racing right now? And we'll start with Jack.
My favorite thing in sim racing right now, that's a very general question, but it
Absolutely.
An open question. My favorite thing in sim racing right now, I guess is what sim racing means to me, is the performance aspect of it. There's a lot of fun parts, there's community and stuff like that, but when you ask that question, this is the answer that's coming from me right now. What's on the tip of my tongue for it is the performance, pushing myself recently to new limits. And I know that sounds corny as blank, but seeing myself race at levels that this time last year I never thought I could achieve. I thought that's just not me. I can't drive that fast. They're aliens. They were made in test tubes. I can't do that stuff. And suddenly I'm driving at that level, and it's like I only made very subtle changes, a lot of mindset shifts, and pretty much the crux of it is like saying, no, I can do this. I belong with these guys. Just got to push myself. And lo and behold, I've pushed myself to new levels. And that's the thing with sim racing is I find it very attractive in that sense. When you push yourself, you get into deeper water, and you get a bit more stressed out. You ask me, how can I talk so much when I'm streaming and making these videos? In these newer lobbies, I'm talking just a little bit less. And the tongue is the tongue sticking out the corner of the mouth for 1 or 2 laps. But the performance is amazing. And just going back to like sim racing and what it means for me, like the racing is real as all hell. The cars may be virtual, but the racing is cutthroat. It is hardcore. You are up against exquisite competitors, people who will do anything to be ahead of you. But at the same time, they won't bin you or make you crash, because that's not the joy of it. They want you to know, I beat you. I beat you fair and square. And it's just beautiful. The aggression on track, but the respect on track, especially in these higher splits. Mostly, sometimes. But yeah, so that's, I forgot the question. What's
your favorite
what's the best thing? It's just pushing yourself to performance and discovering new ground. It's hard. You get stuck in plateaus. You can get beat up sometimes. Sometimes you can recede as a racer. You start getting slower. Of course, we blame everything, the internet connection, fluctuating frequency, and the electricity arriving at the house, everything but ourselves. But yeah, it's just the performance aspect of it. I love it. And the growth there,
It is beautiful though, isn't it? I think that's probably why I know all of us are very competitive people for sure, but it's such a healthy outlet in a way. I didn't even know it really existed until I spent time and invested in iRacing, especially. I'm sure, like, you know, ACC or other online racing, if you find your league or whatever, you'll find it. But if you're someone who came from, like, someone like me, I was like PlayStation, like playing Dirt or like playing Gran Turismo Online, right? Not to shade, like I think Gran Turismo Online, especially sport, that era, they're doing great. Like I think the racing is pretty clean, but iRacing especially, that like in where it's like, you know, you're racing someone for the love of like racing. They're not racing just to crash you out and beat you, if you know what I mean. I absolutely like fallen in love with that. I just think it's such a satisfying thing. It's almost like, you know, and don't even talk about like iRating and like, you know, seeing you improve over time. Like it's incredible. It really feels almost like you're Zwifting or like you're on Strava or something, seeing yourself like improve or go through plateaus. Like you said, it's not always blue skies, but it's equally
it can't be,
kind of medium. It can't be. Everyone has a lap 1 DNF. These things happen.
I literally just had one last night.
Yep. Exactly. What about you, man? What's your favorite thing in?
I would say like, because you guys kind of like talked about it, so I'm gonna shift it and trying to talk about something different. Like, especially when you're talking about like right now. I think like for the longest time for me, as someone who's been like racing karts like for before COVID, and then starting to get into sim racing and a little bit of esports along. You know, I found that for me, you know, the favorite thing sim racing is aspect of it. Like me coming to sim racing, you know, from real life, it's like I know that, you know, for sim racing, the good thing is that you can have a rig and then you can just race at home. You can pair up with anyone online. But like at the time, for me as someone who's spending most of the time in my karting team and like kind of knowing my opponents like as a person inside out, like the idea of like pairing with someone that you don't know on racing wasn't really that appealing to me. It wasn't until like a little bit later on, the more I get into it, like I start to know a little bit more about, you know, obviously there are, you know, my teammates and everything, but also like there's some people that you can just go on track, you race with them hard for like the entire race, and then you have a blast chatting about it after race. And I just love the fact that, you know, you can literally, through sim racing, you can communicate with people no matter where they are in the world. You guys just talking about the same subject and having a blast on it. Doesn't matter because you guys both love that side of racing. It doesn't matter who came out on top. You can have going wheel to wheel, going elbows out, maybe have a little bit of contact here and there during the race. But, you know, after the race, you can chat about it because you enjoy the process of, you know, going wheel to wheel with another. And I just love that side of it.
That's awesome. My side, I think recently I've been coaching a few of my friends and getting them into iRacing and sim racing in general, pretty forcefully, but they're locked in now. And so iRacing especially, I shout out them because they recently have been doing more endurance series on weekends, for example. So it's very common now on iRacing. If you log on, looking at the official signups, you'll typically see there's some sort of endurance event that's available on a Saturday or a Sunday. And it doesn't even matter what time zone you're in. You can be in the US, you can be in New Zealand, you know, Ireland, anywhere, and there'll be something. And we've been trying consistently. You know, it's tough. But the D-class production class racing on iRacing, they have the MX-5s, the Toyotas, all the classics, and you have to throw down for 2 hours, and it's a team. And that's the most exciting thing. And what I love right now is I finally, after coaching my friends, we have the ability to, you know, even in junior racing, it's not high stakes GT3. We hop in a Toyota, we hop in a Mazda, and we've got to work together, you know, look after the car. Everyone's super into it. They're communicating carefully. They're watching out for each other, who's coming up, who's behind. It's, it's such a blast. Awesome. It's an awesome way to, you know, sit down with your friends and just get really stuck into it.
The best thing about, you know, you mentioned production car racing is like, because for me as someone who like mostly racing like GT3s and prototypes, sometimes you just go back to those like prototype cars. Production cars. I made a mistake there. And the racing is so different because like your car's a lot, you know, you have a lot less power, you have a lot less grip, but because of that, you have a lot more time to sort of like process what's going on, and then people race harder because of that, because you have more time to like deal with like the wheel to wheel side of it, and people really go like full levels out. And especially when you mix in like 3 different production cars at a similar speed, but they have vastly different characteristics, those endurance races are so brutal.
They're crazy, man.
I tried this once, and I got reminded of what it feels like to like being in the car, and in some way it feels even more brutal than that, because like in real life, people you still get that sense of speed and sense of danger, so people kind of like they reserve a little bit just so that they don't get flipped completely upside down. But in sim racing, everyone's like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna go full send.
Isn't it crazy that all of us here can know, and most people watching too will know, that you said you've done real racing before. I'm sure me and Elliot, I haven't done racing, but we've been in cars and let's say we've hustled them before, whether it's karting or not. iRacing or sim racing in general can scratch that itch. The second you finish a good race, you've just what's the word? You've satisfied a craving. You've really scratched that itch of racing. Where like let's say without sim racing, every 3 to 6 months I get this urge. I'm like, oh Lord, I gotta go karting. I just because that's the only place I can race. I'm like, I gotta go karting, and then afterwards it's just like, it's done. It's just satisfying.
Majestic.
But yeah, exactly. But when you go racing on iRacing, that's scratch. You get that itch scratched of just, you went out there, you had wheel-to-wheel combat, you pushed yourself, you made mistakes, you did things you thought you couldn't do, and afterwards you can always analyze, and you've opportunities for accountability. If you have that self-awareness, you've opportunities to learn about accountability. If you're not self-aware yet with your racing, there's so much to do, but it scratches the itch. That's awesome. And iRacing, I have to say, does an excellent job. I know you mentioned it earlier, but it's kind of related to this question, so I thought I'd blend the two of them together. One of the cool things I noticed about iRacing is that with most, because I do have a background of video games, that's my entry into it, so I look at it in that light. It's crazy how I've been on iRacing for 4 years, 4 years, and I'm still peaking in my enjoyment. There's no other game where I've played it for that long, where I've raced on it or simmed on it for that long, where I've continued to just love it more and more and more that I do it. And it's not the sim. Granted, they provide an excellent sim that they constantly work on, but it's my performance, it's my growth. In some other shooters, you unlock different skins and camos and guns, and there's things you have to work hard for so you can show it off. Look what I did. In iRacing, bar your iRating and safety rating, there's nothing. You go out for 40 minutes, an hour, 20 minutes, 12 minutes. You go do your thing. And after the race, you sit back and you go, I did my best. I did a performance. Some people got away from me. Those guys behind me, I smoked them. And they know I smoked them. You walk away. It's just like I did a thing. I had an experience. It's borderline meditation for some. You come out, you clear the head. It's a time where you can't think about much. It's really, really cool in that regard. But it's crazy how iRacing, after years of being on it, it's just the love is just still there.
I'm still.
I think about that once a month.
It's like a slow burn in a way. I think most people who just dive in, maybe they get their first month or 3 months or whatever, they'll be throwing it around in the rookies, trying whatever. But I don't think they'll realize until they're racing 6 months down the line or 12 months that like investment in time, it really like compounds, and you're not just like improving a skill, but you are just like discovering more things along the way. It's
and
awesome.
Like a long-term relationship in that sense, it's also worth mentioning that although I'm peaking, there have been times where I stepped away from the sim for a good month, and I was like, look, it's frustrating. I feel like my gear's working against me, and I had like a bad week of racing. A bad week of racing is enough to put you to put a blanket over the sim for a month. In some cases, that's the best thing to do, but it's like a relationship in that sense. It's motorsport, it's a skill, it's a hobby. Sometimes you need to take a break for a while, whether it's a day, it's 2, it's a week, or it's a month. That's fine, and sometimes you come away from things and you come back to it. So when you're dealing with something like that, it's a skill, it's a sport. I fully recognize it as a sport. When it comes to that sense, you do have to manage it in the long term. So although I'm at the highest peak of enjoyment and really, really enjoying myself, there's obviously times that, it goes like that. But over the long term, you got to treat it like a relationship. You got to respect it like that. If you try force it, you might not want to look at it for 6 months. So it is interesting in that, but that's what we deal with when it comes to performance,
I love that. It's a very good breakdown. I mean, like I said, sometimes those DNFs are so bad, you just like, I am not. I got on iRacing. I was gonna be here for like 2-3 hours. It's been 10 minutes. I'm done. But after a while, there'll be that itch, and you'll be back. And man,
Oh yeah,
Totally addicted to it.
And I think,
it'll always have your back.
It'll always have
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, the one thing that you guys bring up, like, when it comes to like the fun of racing, it's so different to like other games. It's like where you in other games and stuff, you progress very quickly, but you also like once you reach a certain milestone, you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm sort of done with it. And then you start asking yourself, okay, where do I go from here? It's like getting your mastery camel in like a first-person shooter game. Okay, cool, I got this cool stuff. And then you feel a little bit empty about, where to go next. But it's sort of like different for racing, where you just like, you keep driving, you think you reach a certain level, and then you realize that there's a lot more for you to discover. It's just how dynamic this hobby is. Like, it's just, you go into racing, even if you like do the same series, you race the same stuff, or you go race in different series, you still manage to find different things and new experience every time.
Different every time.
It is. You never know what to expect.
It's crazy how it can, because you're, as you said, you're pushing performance, you're discovering new things. Naturally, you're discovering new things about yourself. Like there was a time where I was racing at a fairly average level, and I thought, like, why can't just as a flickering thought, why can't I be the best? Now, there's actually a multitude of reasons, and I could pull up an Excel sheet as to why that's not possible 100%. But I thought, why can't I be in the top 1%? What's stopping me there? And once I had that flick and I started racing harder, I got 2.5k iRating, 3k iRating. For anyone that doesn't play iRacing or race iRacing, iRating is a judge of skill, and it's a zero-sum game. So for you to get iRating, you have to take it away from someone, effectively-ish. And if you were to get in, let's say, you start off with 1350 iRating, that's your balance, let's say, and after a race, you can win or lose some. You get up to 3k iRating, kind of 3.5k iRating, you're in the top 5%. You get up to a sliver above 5k, you're in the top 1%. And the things you need to do to progress up is tougher and tougher and tougher. But having to like extract that performance out of yourself is wild. And not accepting a ceiling that you've imposed on yourself is really, really important. Just advice for anyone out there. If you say, oh, I'm slow, that's like saying, oh, I'm bad at remembering names. You're basically programming your brain. Of course, you're going to be bad at names. You've programmed it as such. Start saying you're good at remembering names. Oh, look, lo and behold, you remember names. It's kind of like that in sim racing. And then obviously with the performance aspect of it, my girlfriend
I legitimately think we will have to get JACKZER back on for a breakdown of like sim racing psychology. Because I remember you've done a video about it.
Yeah.
It was a while ago, but it's fascinating. Like extracting performance and then that pressure, you kind of putting yourself to be better. Some people, of course, will say it's like toxic.
It's all here. Like, sure, your arms and your legs are what control the inputs, but everything comes from the head. So it's really how you deal with the emotions, the performance, all that kind of stuff. What I was saying is about my girlfriend is she hates when she brings me a real world problem. And then I'm like, look, if this was iRacing or if this was a race or look in F1, you push it. Like, I use these analogies and they're not wrong and they're like perfect. But she looks at me and she's just like, you just not do this here. And it's like, look, I've started some races from the back. I was sure I wasn't going to make it, but you keep going lap by lap. You don't think about it. P7 at the end of the race. And you can guess where she go. But...
Oh, yeah. It's the story of the year, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
But naturally, we all know that some traits and some skills that you develop in sim racing, you transfer over into your real life. Your patience, your trust in the process, your trust in the method. Your trust in what you're capable of because you keep breaking new records. You also dip down to new lows as well. And how you recover yourself, that's all transferable into real life. And if anyone's not transferring any of those skills into their real life from sim racing, you should. I highly recommend it.
So natural as well, because like the thing about like racing is that there's a lot of things that you apply into sim racing, so applies into. Well, I recall myself like back in when I was 13, started karting and doing. I was a vastly different person to who I am right now, because like I was, it was basically a very normal 13-year-old kid who has a bad temper and basically just like rushing everything. Like there's a tendency of me to like I want to rush everything. There's still this tendency living inside me right now. Like I'm still the same person in that regard, but like now after like doing so much racing, I've learned that there's a lot of things like take your time and sort of like do the right thing at the right time and all. something happen. And if it's not going to happen, no matter how much effort you put in, it's not going to happen. Sometimes there's things like that. Like, for example, like when you say you do a day-to-day race in iRacing, there are just some times where just like people behind you just having an incident and then it just piles you up. Nothing you can do. And that's part of racing. We always say that. And I think the best thing about racing is that, as much as this is a virtual thing, you do it on the sim break, it doesn't really happen in real life. But, the experience and the things that you pick up from it pretty much real and something that you can make use of along the way. That's one of the best
100%.
thing that I picked up from racing.
100%.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, it's like when I went out to drive a real car, I noticed that on a racetrack, an instructor came out with me, and straight away they asked me, "Have you done this before?" I was like, "No." They're like, "So you sim race?" I was like, "Yes." And now I had some bad habits. I had some wrong turn-in points because the IRL FOV is a bit iffy. But I had to work with it. My FOV that I deal with in my office is a bit different to IRL FOV. So I had some early turn-in points that the instructor, she really had to whack out of me. She did eventually, but like it's crazy how any sim racer who understands the basics, you turn right, you use the left part of the track, using all the track, braking late, and if you have a decent bit of pace, nothing too fast, you hop out in a real car on a real track, you'll be stunned at what you've learned and how it is completely transferable. Flight sim and motorsport are two of the only sims where the cockpit is replicated. Your butt's in a seat, your hands on a wheel, your feet are at the pedals. It's the exact same in a race car. The cockpit is completely replicated, which is stunning. Really cool. And when you're racing people, their butt's in a seat, their hands are on a wheel, and their feet are at pedals. It might look different, but it's all the same. And that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to probably the last question of our little podcast here. And that is, for those who have been listening to us talk about iRacing, but haven't maybe jumped in yet, they might be still just getting their first wheel or, still trying other titles. What would be your best piece of advice to someone who was just getting started on iRacing? We'll go Jack and then Alvin.
Super. I guess the best advice I have would be for someone before they get on iRacing. One thing that iRacing can seem is very intimidating. Naturally, the people, when you see iRacing before actually being on it, you may be watching YouTube videos, you may be watching live streamers, you may be watching clips, but usually some of these people have been on it for a while and they're quite fast. And it can look very intimidating. It's almost like it's esports, or it's, you need to qualify to come here, or you need to be like exceptionally quick. This is only where the special fast people go. You're not special and fast. You can't come here until you're special and fast, but that's flawed. But for me personally, before I got onto iRacing, it felt very intimidating. Now that's fun. When I felt I was going out on the track, half of me felt like I don't belong here, which is cool. There's pressure. That's fine. Your legs shake before you start a race. That's fun. That's cool. It means a lot to you. That's cool. But if you're nervous about getting on iRacing because you think, I'm not that fast, I'm not that sharp, my gear's not the best, that's absolute BS. That's completely wrong. You have as much a right as anyone, as Max Verstappen, as myself, as these two lovely gentlemen here. Anybody you see, you have just as much, if not more, of a right to be out on that track. So if you feel intimidated by iRacing, don't. Get a subscription. Don't worry about all the extra expensive stuff that you can buy. You most definitely do not have to buy cars and tracks to enjoy iRacing. There's so much free content you can hustle with for years on there. Get a car, go out on a track. Yes, it's going to feel scary. Yes, you don't know what you're doing. Have some fun. Someone's given you an excellently designed virtual car for you to sit in, play with, and just race and discover it. Yeah, you're going to spin, you're going to crash, you're going to make a show of yourself. That's the joy of it. That's the joy of it. But then one day you'll hit a corner, you'll hit a lap, and you'll go, oh, wait, I'm growing. Fortunately, that happens at the start. The growth curve is quite sharp, so it's quite fun at the start. But yeah, the best advice I have is you belong there no matter what your speed is. That's the first misconception. It's dealing with a misconception, I think, guys, that is very common. So it's not so much advice, but dealing with a misconception, I think, is you belong
misconception. There. Everyone belongs.
Yeah,
sure. I think the thing about iRacing is just because of like the way that it kind of presents itself and the way that it does quote unquote matchmaking. Like everyone's being distributed into like a lobby with real people, on this similar skill, elo rating, or I should say in this case, and the part of it like the reason why it's so intimidating to some people, to at least to what I know from some people who've gone to iRacing and asked for advice from me, that they feel like, whenever they get into it, like it's kind of pushing them. It feels uncomfortable for them to like, I get into it and then there's no room for like mistakes and not be good at. And I think one good thing that Jack brought up just now was, there's certainly going to be times where you're going to get into a race and you feel like you're not up to speed or not being completely comfortable in the car. You feel like you're completely beating out by everyone. But, I think, for people who are looking to get into iRacing, I think firstly, you definitely have some sort of like a basic in at least like a very foundational of racing. Otherwise, you probably won't be looking into iRacing. Like for peeps like me, at least, for all I know, is like when you first get into racing, you're going to look into titles that everyone talks about, the Gran Turismo and all that kind of stuff, because those are more, they have a little bit more gaming elements. So it may look a little bit more fun. For iRacing, it's a lot more hardcore. It's basically what you do in real life being put into your PC. So I guess in that sense, this is where people feel a little bit intimidating. It doesn't feel like, it feels very real. So it can be a little bit scary. So I think for me,
From the outside, it
advice,
looks like there's a lot of barriers to entry, because there are
exactly.
some, not a lot though. It's not that much, but yeah, sorry, as you're saying, yeah.
But, the thing, I think the biggest problem is it's mostly a mental thing, because like, I think for iRacing, there's a lot of things like racing, subscriptions, you need to pay money for cars and tracks and content and all that kinds of stuff. And then, there's a lot of things that can look very scary at first. But like for me, because initially I came from, firstly, like I said, from Forza, from Gran Turismo, from ACC, and then into iRacing. It was like that for me at the start, even though I was someone that has a pretty good foundation in terms of, knowing how to drive a car fast. Not that I'm the quickest driver out there. I can pull a lap together decently, but it was intimidating for me at first, because I feel like I feel like, do I just like go in and for a sim that I pay for good money every year, and now I need to get extra content. So it didn't really feel appealing to me at first, until I kind of decided to, okay, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna throw everything away. I'm just gonna hop in, drive the car, and just experience the race. And then, and after that, it clicked for me, because in iRacing, when everyone's kind of like getting into it and they have this sort of like a mental preparation of, okay, I came in here, I didn't came for anything, I didn't came for like money or like progressions and stuff. I came in, I want to have a proper race. It's not to say that there's certainly some people who just came in like, I just want to grind my safety rating. There's always that person in the lobby, especially like for rookies. But like, especially once you get out of like the rookies and start to racing, you can see that everyone getting into a race, they might not be the quickest driver out there, but they were always trying to go elbows out and trying to race you. They were trying to, do everything to sort of like keep you behind or keep themselves ahead of everyone. And I found it like fascinating when everyone's kind of sort of like doing their best. They everyone has a different interpretation in terms of driving. Like you see different driving styles, you see ways to race. And I love that aspect of everyone doing their best, similarly paced, but everyone has a different way of going racing, different ways of extracting their pace out. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I think the fun part of that is you can just get yourself drowned in that experience and not to think about anything. And if you lose, if you win, it's fine. You don't have to look at the ratings and stuff, because it kind of goes up over time if you're quick enough.
And that connects pretty much to what my thing would be, which is really just trust the process. Especially if, you're just coming in, you're just hopping into rookies, you're giving it a go, it's the Mazdas, it's the Formula V or whatever it is, right? Just trust that process. It's going to be a little uncomfortable at the start, but everyone's there to race. There's always a race for you, right? There's going to be similar people in the similar boat as you, and it's just enjoy that. Like, it's awesome. I think some of my best races have been like going through rookies, getting my D, getting my C, and going up. And I don't know about you, but this is me especially. Like, I never forget my first win. I just don't.
Yeah.
Like it's stuck in my mind. It's a Mazda MX-5. I know exactly where I am. I know how it felt. It's crazy. I would have never expected in a game, something virtual, that I would remember that. If you know what I mean, it's just like wow. Like it really sticks with you.
One thing I'd love to offer the viewers as well, I think, is that when it comes to learning stuff, and you know, there's courses and there's coaches and there's a lot of different ways you can spend money on going faster. It's pretty much like anything, but in sim racing, it's very rich in content for this. Everything that's being sold is already stuff that's been talked about for free. That's it. And in general, like anything in life, you know, if you want to learn how to cook a steak, there's a video how to cook a steak on YouTube. If you want to do a course, you know, it's the same information, but it's behind a paywall and it's presented well and stuff like that. But if you want to learn, you know, there's guides, beginner guides, how to brake, what is a driving line, what is trail braking, what is oversteer, what is understeer. All this stuff is online. Is it going to be fast? No. But you don't want it to be fast. You want to enjoy the process. If you do it too fast, you'll trip, fall, and break your face. No one wants that. So what you want to do is just take it handy. There's loads of content online. Lots of great content creators who have courses. Danny Lee, I have to give a shout out here. That dude's a gentleman. If you Google Danny Lee course, bring it to a website. He has 15 videos, beginner, intermediate, expert. That stuff there is gold. You're talking, you'd pay hundreds for that sort of stuff. And gentlemen, absolutely, just put it up in a list. And if anyone's ever asking, hey, should I do a course or should I do this? I say, you go there. Go back in 6 months, then we'll talk. And so there's so much stuff online.
Danny,
even for his like free videos, they're like really top tier content.
I even see it on my Instagram. Like he's doing like short form versions of it now, which I can share to people.
Lot of love for Danny with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, sim racing, the community and the creators we have are pretty. It's a pretty cool space to be in. I think we're pretty happy, which is, obviously was our entire point of like doing this podcast, is to bring on people like yourself and talk about everything great about it. I think this episode, especially for a first one, probably pretty iRacing heavy, but I mean, we just love you too much. And you know, we're all
to be honest, anyway. After doing a bit of this, I'd personally love to come back. I think it'd be really cool. I think we could talk about a lot of stuff, as Elliot mentioned. I do like kind of putting a bit of a psychology twist on iRacing. As I said, like it's all done from the head. You know, you have a good moment, you're happy, then you spin, you get overconfident, you spin, you have a bad moment, you lose confidence, and then you try and get it back. There's anger, there's a lot of stuff in there that you can control. We could definitely talk about that in a future podcast. And the best thing is everyone has something to share there. There's no experts on that because we all understand ourselves, our emotions, how we process stuff, how we process wins and defeats. And it all comes down to performance, you know, optimizing yourself. So if you can optimize how you're thinking about something, you can definitely optimize your output, your behavior.
Awesome, man. Well, I'd say that probably brings us to the end of our first episode. So, Jack, honestly, a pleasure to have you. Really appreciate you taking the time. And hopefully we'll have you back on sooner rather than later.
100%. Thanks for having me, lads. It was great crack, and I'd come back anytime. Absolute pleasure, boys. Thank you very much.
Legend.
See you later, buddy. See you around. So that's our first episode of the SIMAGIC Podcast. Obviously, it was a great fun talking to Jaxa, lovely bloke. And we hope to do more of this in the future. So please let us know down below of who you want to see in our next episode. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Thanks so much for watching. Let us know, and we'll see you in the next one.
Keep racing, Sim Magician.
Of course.